Hi everyone. So I've inserted a clip in here that I filmed on my phone, which is basically a download of my interpretation of Shunyamurti's, who is the Sat Yoga, I don't want to call him a guru, but I guess he is. He's a spiritual teacher that is currently residing in Costa Rica. And he has been a psychotherapist in the past, in my understanding. I find him to be an incredibly intelligent, insightful, wise teacher. And so after watching a video that he made on the ego and how the conditioning occurs and how the projections occur onto others, I basically ran a little phone video, which I'm going to post because it really just captures the gist of how projection happens. So I will explain ego a little bit more simply and concisely in future videos, but I'm going to post this for you anyway. I've printed alongside my scribbly sketch that I did up on the fly a nicer poster for you to be able to actually read the words. And I just want you to know that that is not all of my belief or ideology. It's what I divested from Shunyamurti's teachings on the ego. So I hope you enjoy it.
Okay, so what we have here is the model of the ego, and what we've actually got as a conscious mind is only this much, because you are basically formed from the very basic stage on your collective unconscious. So that's basically the milieu that you're born into. You've also got your intergenerational legacy, which is going to manifest through the projections of the mother onto you as a little speck of light. I've got you the speck of light, which is in here somewhere, gets buried down here somewhere now, in utero. So as soon as your speck of light of consciousness manifests in your mother's womb, in a woman's womb, right, or your mother, you are subject to her neurochemical and her thoughts and feelings and emotions, right, about you. And this comes from the intergenerational legacy. It can also come from the collective unconscious, but we won't worry too much about that because that's there all the time throughout all these levels. So as soon as you are incarnate as a speck of light, as a tiny little embryo, a fetus, what goes on for your mother in her environment is going to affect you. Does she want you? Are you born as the right gender? Is she stressed out? Is the father supportive? What are her views of men and her family? Is her family network supportive of her and you as the infant? So all of that is going to impinge on you. We know now that babies are highly shaped by the influences in utero. So by the time you're actually born, you're born here, let's say, you're actually already born fairly well imprinted into. But then you're, of course, born into usually the family of the mother. If you're not, then obviously you've got another thing to deal with. You've got abandonment and separation if you're given away. But if you're born into the family of the mother, then you're going to get a lot of your needs met, but you're going to have a lot left unmet because mothers aren't perfect. Nobody's perfect. Nobody is... no parents are ideal. No parent, unless they're enlightened parents, very lucky, but they're rare. So your unmet needs are going to culminate on top of whatever the unmet needs of the family of origin are. You're going to suffer hurt, you're going to suffer traumas, and all of this is called conditioning. Right? They're all conditioning, and they form the body of everything you know, your identification, who you are. Are you a boy? Are you a girl? Are you good? Are you bad? Are you right? Are you wrong? Are you a Christian or Muslim? Are you the black sheep of the family? Are you the chosen, the golden child? All of those things are going to form. They're all under here. Now, as you're a baby, right, you don't have a context for all of this. It's simply raw experience, what we call in psychodynamic theory, object relations, form mappings of that. But we'll talk about that some other time. It's a little bit complex. But all of this happens, that wires up the brain. Let's say this is a brain. This is all wired into the brain, right? By the time you're 1 or 2, it's all sealed up. All the major wiring and pruning's done. But as you're about, your personality's forming, your ego's forming all the time. But it's not until you're about 2, 3, you become a social being, right? And as you become a social being, you have to navigate the world. So that'll be working on your identifications. It'll be your personality, will be partly temperament, partly these epigenetic forces from way back, right? And the experiences you've had in utero as a child, as an infant, and your attachment are going to shape your temperament, your personality, and form your basic sense of self. So up here, they'll all sort of feed up into this conscious sense of self. But all of the stuff, you can't keep all of this in consciousness. You simply can't keep the minutiae of each interaction, especially prior to memory. It's all in the body consciousness. It's all in the subconscious, the deep consciousness. Right, now you have to keep a lid on all of this undercurrent stuff. You can't be conscious of it all, but you have to keep a lid on your social self. And so you form this thing called a superego, right? It's part of the ego that keeps all of this sense of self, this identity, this personality, this how you are meant to be, who you are told you are. You are never actually who you are told you are. You're not that. You're this, but you're told all these things. So you have to keep that identity intact. This is your ego. You have to keep that false sense of self intact. So it's done by the superego and defense mechanisms. They monitor the sense of being good and prideful and good in the world, and they keep at bay the feelings of being bad and shameful. But what happens is that all of this stuff pierces through the conscious self. You can't be aware of it all. We can only focus our attention on about 10% of what's going on anyway. So all this pings through here. All of this stuff pings through there. And where do we see it? Outside world, other people, our mirrors, right? Other people are our mirrors. So true. We will manifest all of these dynamics according to time, place, situation out there. We will see all of this stuff coming from out there so that we get to the secondary self here. That's the primary self that Shunyamurti talks about, the ego I. And this is the secondary self, the second eye. So he's talking about the third eye opening. That's the third eye there. That's the Godhead, the spiritual self, the ever-changing essential self. So as we have all of this material passing through, depending on day, time, place, location, what's being triggered? Are you having a trigger, a trauma, or an unmet need being triggered, an identification of that you hold dear? Is that being challenged by somebody? Right? Is something arising that's pushing triggering a hurt button? Right? That hurt my sense of pride. Right here. Right? So what happens is that it pings. We see it out here. It's like the stuff's in here. Our hurt, because it's we have to defend our ego. People that are egoless, they're like, yeah, it doesn't bother me. Like genuine people, not the people that are detached. But people that don't, that are enlightened don't have this. But all of us, otherwise, we're human. This is our nervous system. This is our emotional, instinctual self. It's very hard to avoid. So we all have trigger points of hurt. But we can't look in most of the time. Some of us can with therapy, but most of the time we can't. The hurt always feels like it's coming from some other person. It's like, oh, you did this and made this feeling come up, therefore it's you. Right? So this plays out on everywhere. This is why couples get into so much trouble when they've got attachment issues and woundings from the past. Right? If mum was good and sufficient and the environment was supportive, there's not so much of this stuff to ping out there in relationships later on. But when those things aren't met, when there's deficits there, it pings out there, right? And you simply get into a position where you're feeling vulnerable around your ego, your deep shame, your unmet needs, your trauma, not getting needs are not getting met, and it will appear as happening out here because that's where all the stuff can get pinged out. It basically pings out, bounces off them, and gets seen. Then you can see it. But what we do is we see it as coming, as blaming as the other person hurt us. Pain comes up, the other person hurt us. If we can see, if we can look in at least for a start and start working on this material and look in and see that what is painful is our pain from our past, then we can take back our power, as it's not getting pinged out here. We can look within, we can see where it came from, age, date, developmental stage, core wounding, right? Core wounding. It's in our core, right? From our core memories or not, usually from a, earlier stage, usually 0 under 4, right? We don't have long-term memories until we're a good 5 or 6 years old normally. So we're not remembering all of the painful, shameful things that happened to us earlier than that. All of the letdowns, all the time Mummy didn't have her arms open to pick us up when we hurt ourselves. All the time Dad turned around and walked out the door to work and we were just left with our toys because he didn't have time to play for us. All of those tiny little death by 1,000 cuts are all under here. And all we need is a similar situation to appear out there in a time. Sometimes we're ready. Some people keep a very dense lid on this. But for some, this is quite thin, right? As the defense mechanisms, right, can be quite, if there's a lot under here, these are rapid fire, right? It depends on the personality and the psychology of a person as well. It's not a personal fault. Like some people are more empathic. They're dealing with more under here. So more comes out. They're more sensitive. But there's more of an overload up here. So things can get triggered and maybe they're more ready to be working on stuff. And so that's why it tends to come out more. But this is why when we feel triggered by other people, we have to really introspect and look within. And it's hard. I still struggle with this. This will still happen and I'll go, it's hard to resolve all this stuff. But we can rise above and have a look at it like this and go, aha, okay, so what's going on here? That's going on there. It's not really them. We might still have a negative feeling around them. And sometimes maybe it's right. Maybe they are too triggering for us. But we do need to look within and see what is this that I'm playing out there, because it might not even be real. We might have a sense that somebody has upset us by an oversight, right? They've forgotten to check in, call. This has happened to me recently, fair. But what it is that there was so many unmet needs for being cared for or responded to when I was a baby, so many. Like there was abandonment and giving away and rejection and unwantedness and not being wanted as a pregnancy or a child or anything. So there's a pool of unmet needs for being taken care of if I'm not well, right? It's when I'm the most vulnerable. I can take care of myself the rest of the time, but then I need other people. And when they're not there, it's like a desert. It's like waking up and finding yourself in a desert. It's that severe when there's that many unmet needs. But it's when I get on my feet, it's behoving on me to go, all right, what am I going to do about this next time? Like, how do I negotiate that in a way that is going to draw people in positively to me and not push them away? Because that is the confirmative experience, is that you will see that there is nobody there. And then if somebody does move in and extend a hand, the really wounded will push away. They will literally almost like bite the hand and go, no. Like it's as if they need that confirmatory experience of being the rejected one. And so they recreate it. They recreate a drama out there. Mm.